So next up, we are grateful to have Vicki Tuji Wade, who's a Noongar woman from the Gorang, Minang and Bilun and Wajari in southwest Western Australia. And Vicki is the director of Rheumatic Heart Disease Australia and hopes that one day her long-time efforts will have contributed to closing the gap for her grandchildren and their children. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thanks. Kaya, Yoga Mam and Gulanga, Nach, Vicki Tudich, Biblim Noongar, Jerapan Mudich, Budja, Turrbal, and surrounding nations lands on which we're meeting today. I'm privileged to be here and really was thankful yesterday for the welcome to country that we got. Very important for me as an Aboriginal woman that I'm welcomed on country before I do any business on country. So I feel blessed and I feel the ancestors are with us, ancestors of this land and ancestors of my land also, always walking behind me and helping me almost always to make the right judgments. And today it's going to be a little bit different. I'll look at the statistics in a minute and they're going to be different statistics, but before I start, brother, you can talk. We were up there in the speaker's lounge before and he said, yeah, I can really talk. I was a bit nervous and he's going, no, it's all right, I can talk, it's all right. And I love the Brisbane Blacks, so after a couple of beers it gets right up loud, it goes louder and louder, so yeah, I can relate to the stories and that, so thank you, brother, for your talk just now. Rheumatic heart disease in Australia, Wanji Arbadap, so that means telling the story my way or our way through the Noongar lens. And I want to pay respect to the Gulangars, the young ones who carry scars inside and outside. They carry the hope too for the future. And also would like to say that this young fella, when I went out to communities, much older than now, but him and a couple of other young fellas that I looked after, they seemed sad. They didn't really understand what was happening to them. They weren't playing with other people in the community. Usually they'd be out running around, but they come back from their surgery and they, a little bit shy. So that prompted me into doing my PhD. So I just went for my confirmation of candidature about a week ago and got past that hurdle, which is great. And that was a bit scary, but I got past that. So I'm looking at the social and emotional well-being of young Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander people with acute rheumatic fever and rheumatic heart disease. I'm looking at a trauma-informed model, but using healing and some yarn in circles. So I think these young kids, they carry the scars, and I think these scars too, if you look back at the root causes of the root causes, are 140 plus years of systematic neglect and failings of Australia to look after First Nations children. Now, this is going to be statistics in a different way. But before statistics, I want to tell you a story. This is Liddy Wu, who's passed, unfortunately, from rheumatic heart disease, and his mum, Rosemary, wants me to tell the story so other people can learn from his story, but his legacy lives on. And if anyone has seen Take Heart, if you're travelling Qantas, it's on the TV in Qantas. So if you look at TV and documentaries on the planes in Qantas, it's now Take Heart's on it. So he features in this movie-length film, which I just had the honour of co-producing. So Liddy Wu, he was 21, just 21 when he passed. He died from we think it would have been a stroke on his mother's porch in Darwin. He had gone to boarding school in Darwin, and his house mothers would leave notes everywhere, little stick-it notes saying, don't forget to take your warfarin, don't forget you've got your bicillin injection. So he had all these notes and support, and when he left school, he was, 18, and, with them young men think they're bulletproof. So he fell off treatment, unfortunately. So I dedicated my PhD to Liddy Wu, and his mother came to the launch of Take Heart, in Melbourne. So that's Liddy Wu, and that's Biscuit, and he loved his cat. Now, this is statistics. Now, this is statistics my way, Noongar way. I rarely put up statistics with lots of figures, with prevalences, incidences, morbidity, mortality. I think, and I do appreciate those who need statistics, but I think statistics, we become numb. As Australia, we become numb to statistics. They roll off our tongue like a mantra. But to me, the most important thing is, what are the stories behind the statistics? So I want to try and tell you the story, but in my way, of how bad rheumatic heart disease is in Australia and what's caused it. Why have we got the highest rates in the world of this disease that's been eradicated in every other developed country? It's a national shame. So I'm doing it my way. So, young, these are our Gullingas, our babies have been born, and they're happy, cheerful. Look at him, little fella there. He looks so happy, hey? And his mum, you can see the love in his mum's face, can't you? You can see her. And my family say to me, when I look at my kids and my grandchildren, I've got 4 children and 10 grannies, and I get this square jaw when I'm looking at them because there's so much love for your children and your grandchildren. Now, when Aboriginal kids are born, they are premature, as we know. A lot of people in the audience would know. Premature, we still have infant mortality, perinatal mortality, but in Moppy's, at the Urban Institute, they're doing really good things. So they're 6% above the target, and we've still not closed the gap, but they've closed the gap in the Urban Institute, so we've got a lot to learn from them. But these children, they're born, and for those of us who know attachment theory, circle of security, brain development, if you're born into a loving house, we saw Maslow's hierarchy there. You've got shelter, you love, you've got warmth, people love you, you're belonging, and you feel good from the beginning, you're going to have a better outcome in life. What happened during colonisation? Unfortunately, our kids were taken, and they were taken from the arms of their mothers. So this is a picture, some pictures that my brother has given me. He put an exhibition together in West Australia called Kerosenes and Love Hearts. He took a whole lot of people from the stolen generations or their children from the stolen generations, and they went back to the missions in West Australia. They sat there and they told my brother their stories. He took a lot of photos and he had a big photographic exhibition. So this one was over from West Australia, and our children were taken, and they were taken to missions. So this is quite a different story, quite a different picture than we've seen the one before. This is through a decolonised lens that I'm trying to show you. So, all right, acute rheumatic fever comes around about the age of 5 to 14. So 5-year-olds, they're out there on community. Look at them, they look mischievous. Look at them. That one there, the second one there, I don't know if he's pushing this fella, and I don't know what this one is going to do with the rope. Might lasso the leg. But this one here, they're full of mischief, they're full of life. But this one here, I don't know where he's going to land because there's nothing in that chair there. So he might land right through that chair. But these kids, they're happy, they're connected, they're on country. So they're happy, connected, on country. What happened during colonisation, however, our kids were taken, not babies, but children were taken, and I've got family who are members of the stolen generations. They were taken and they were put on missions. Now this little fella, and this is what stories that came out from my brother, was that when they were marched along and they'd look at him, he wants to go to the toilet so bad, but they weren't allowed to stop. They had to keep marching. So there was a lot of our kids that went through a lot of trauma that went into these missions. Now, I'm going to read this here because I don't want to get any word wrong of this, because this is telling you our history and why Aboriginal people are unhealthy today. A group of tiny half-caste and quadroon children at the Darwin half-caste home. The Minister for the Inferior, Mr. Perkins, recently appealed to charitable organisations in Melbourne and Sydney to find homes for the children and rescue them from becoming outcasts. outcasts in our own country. I like the girl in the middle, someone said. But if she's taken by anyone else, any of the others will do, as long as they are strong. And I know why she wanted this girl, because she's fair-skinned. So during a simulation, they'd be able to assimilate in communities easier. That was the mantra. Now, at that same time, that would have been about 1960, this mother, taken away from her traditional lands, she married a Wadjula, a white fella. She had to get an exemption certificate. In West Australia, from 1906 to 1964, there was a board established called the Protectors of Aborigines, and there was an Aboriginal board. They had state welfare care of every Noongar child under the age of 16. Didn't belong to the parents, belonged to the state. So they could do what they want with them. So this woman was very scared when she left her traditional lands. She lived down southwest of Perth. When they went back to community, and she was allowed to go back to community, but some weren't, but she was allowed to go back to community, and they had to hide this little girl because the brothers are darker, so they had to hide this little girl in the bush. They could see the cattle dust from the cattle car coming. You could see the dust before you could hear it. So when you saw this dust, which looks like a storm, they would race off and hide this little one. And also what you'll notice in this picture is that these children are really well dressed, because mum was too scared that welfare was going to come and take baby. And see these shoes here? This little one hated wearing those shoes, and that's why now I've got these on and not boots, because that's me and that's my mum. Yeah, because I hate shoes. And also with these young ones, for me it's important that I make my grandchildren, help my grandchildren to be strong in culture. That's me and one of my oldest. I'll go back that way. He's one. Oh, you do there? Yeah, one of my grandchildren, Tristan. He's just turned 12, but we were doing a acknowledgement of country to the Tongan group that live close to me. So I took Tristan and I said, "You've got to come with Nan, so I can teach you cultural ways so you can be strong in culture." So that's my little Tristan. Now, what happens with acute rheumatic fever? So we know it's predominantly in 5 to 14-year-olds. And then when they get a little bit older, you know, they're coming into the youth, they could have had 2 or 3 bouts of ARF by now. And sometimes they could have rheumatic heart disease, but we don't know. Because of what we heard in the panel, ARF becomes, undiagnosed, a couple of bouts of ARF and you could have RHD. They're a group at the moment on the Deadly Heart Track up in Torres Strait, and they've found 3 definite RHD and a couple of borderlines, and this is just them up there in the last 2 days doing that screening that we were talking about before. So active case finding. So, these young ones, they're still active, they're still connected to community, they're still doing okay, but what happens then is a whole group of young Aboriginal men, Noongar men, were taken from Top End, Kimberley Way, and marched down 5-7 day trek, marched down to Fremantle, held in that big holding thing at Fremantle, and then were put on ships and taken to Rottnest Island, where they were imprisoned at Rottnest. So there's this whole group of young men that were pretty much a genocide, I reckon. But what you'll notice here too is this young man here, he's got his traditional scars, he's got his ceremonial scars. And I always say that these young boys now, with their scars on their chest, they're vertical scars, they're made by cold knife scalpels. It's not like these ceremonial scars which we wear, our young men, our Noongar men wore with pride. They were done by ceremony, by our clever people, by our lawmen, and they were done for them to become men, to have their position in society, in Noongar society. So the scars are quite different. And what happens, all this then brings up trauma. So you can't argue now about intergenerational trauma. We've got epigenetics that say, and it can go down to about 7 generations. So there's a lot of trauma Aboriginal people are living with. So in rheumatic heart disease, I try to get people now to look past the biomedical model, to incorporate culture, understanding of this Aboriginal people's, Torres Strait Islander people's journeys throughout our colonisation. We call it a decolonising lens. Now, I was the first Aboriginal nurse to do a keynote at the Cardiac Society of Australia and New Zealand about 10 years ago. And I was there the night before and I was practicing. I was a bit nervous because I'm first Aboriginal nurse. So I was practicing and then I got a phone call. Vic, we've lost Bobo. My nephew committed suicide. He was hounded by the police in Perth. He had so much discrimination and racism, the poor fella. And I said to myself, do I go and do I do the talk or do I stop? And I said, you know what? I'm going to go and do that talk and I'm going to tell the story, because cardiac disease, to me, and all this chronic disease is the pointy end of colonisation. So I did, and that's my brother there, who lost his son, and his wife Selena, who do a lot of talks now around healing and prevention of suicide. This is my lived experience, and I'm sharing it with you just so we know that when you're looking after Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, you'll know the social, you'll know the political, you'll know the environmental circumstances that we live in. And we're all different, but we all do have, I don't think there's one Aboriginal person, correct me brother if I'm wrong, that doesn't know someone that's been a member of the stolen generations. Maybe not in their family, but you know, they know of people. And of course, when I was working in the Heart Foundation years ago, a journo rang me and he said, we're doing an article about a young man from Maningrida who was playing football, scored a few tries, and then dropped down dead during just the last quarter. So when Aboriginal people lose loved ones, children to rheumatic heart disease, the whole community mourns, and they can go into mourning for 2 weeks to a month. And so Dr. Ari was saying this morning in our panel that each year we've got a lot of kids dying from rheumatic heart disease. So we're continually going to funerals. And some funerals last, we have ceremony around sorry business, and as I said, they can last for a long time. And we're just sick of burying our young children. We're sick of burying our young children to these diseases that have been eliminated in every single developed country. And I'm just going to go. And we can't keep doing what we're doing. We have to change, because we can't keep like we did with Liddy Wu. He was about 8 when he got rheumatic heart disease, had 3 or 4 open heart surgeries. We fixed his valves, and what did we do? Send him back into the environment where acute rheumatic fever loves. So we can't keep doing that. We have to change. We have to look at the social, the political, the environment around Aboriginal people, Torres Strait Islander people that come in with rheumatic heart disease. And if we want to close the gap, we have to look through that decolonised lens so that we know who we're treating, and the people we're treating, Aboriginal, Torres Strait Islander people, when they're coming into your services. So you're not just treating them for a sore throat, but there's this whole lot of other things that are happening in their life. And, you know, it's quite easy to say we're non-compliant, whereas, you know, really that term should be thrown out. But there's a whole lot of other things happening in Aboriginal people's lives. We have to change the lens from which we view rheumatic heart disease, and that's what I've been trying to do in Rheumatic Heart Disease Australia for the last 5 years. and walking side by side with people. So Nijanunga Budjakot mean place, person, heart. So when we walk side by side with people, we've got our heart and our mind in. So I've put culture in the centre of the guidelines. So the guidelines are not just clinical guidelines. We had a working group of experts, and a lot of them had the lived experience of rheumatic heart disease. So we've got culture in the centre of clinical guidelines. I've got a champion program, and there are 3 of my beautiful champions. And there's one other young one who's not frightened to get up in front of conferences and talk about her lived experience. And the Deadly Heart Trek mob, they're up in Thursday Island, Bamaga, and you'll know him, that fella there. Beautiful man who works really well with our communities. I did a cultural session with them before they went out to community, and Rob Justo said, Vicki, that was a great yarn we had. It wasn't cultural awareness, it was yarning up about culture. And that was him yesterday on Thursday Island, or the day before. Now I know what paediatric cardiologists eat for breakfast. You'll know him, some of you will know him. Another beautiful person like Rosemary in the room, like Josh, like Dr. Ari, who work tirelessly to support our mob with rheumatic heart disease. And that is a crayfish chili pie. So now I know what they eat for breakfast. And just to finish, this is the model that Dr. Rob said to me. You have to put it up, Vicki, because I really do love that concept of ethical space. And we've heard a lot about therapeutic interventions, about communication. You've got health services, you've got our community, and where they come together is what's called, which I'm going to work on this model over the next year or so, is an ethical space. So you're bringing 2 worlds together. The Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander view, holistic view, our Aboriginal cosmologies into Western ideologies, and health systems that are built on colonial systems. And there's lots of systematic individual changes that have to happen, and I think this ethical space could be a space where we could work together much better. Thank you. Thanks.
Vicki, so much. We talk so often about biopsychosocial models in healthcare, and I think it was just such a privilege today to get the opportunity to hear a true and authentic holistic model, and I really appreciate the intimacy and honesty and authenticity you brought today.